Hello, everybody, and welcome to this Your Overseas Home webinar, the legal process of purchasing a property in France. Thank you for joining us, and where I'm joined also by Emilie Bensmihen from Buckles Law. Maybe let's start off straight out with you introducing yourself and saying hi, Emilie.
Hello, and thank you for having me today. So my name is Emilie Bensmihen. I'm a dual qualified avocat in France and solicitor in the UK. I work for the French team of Buckles Law. Together we are a team of a few lawyers. And we specialize in French property law and inheritance related to French property. Yeah.
Excellent, thank you. Yes, so we're going to be demystifying the legal process. We want to know if you've got any questions about, I shall ask questions and we'll try and cover everything. The process of buying, the timescales, the costs, tricky French legal terms that you may not be used to, differences between whether, if you're from the UK or the US, differences in that process. But what we want most of all is your questions. And there should be a questions tab on the right hand side of your screen. And just to get you clicking, get you into the whole process, why don't you tell us where you're at the moment? I know we're getting a few Trumpugees coming over, looking at buying property in Europe as an alternative, but equally there's lots of people from all over the world joining us today. So it'd be great if we could find out where you're from. One little interesting fact I want to share with you is when we do our annual survey, we ask people what they're worried about when they are buying in France, and 43% say they find the buying process confusing and worrying. When we ask people who have already bought how the process was, 85% said it was easy or easier than they expected. So that still leaves 15% who are on the difficult side, which is why we need to speak to Emilie. But it's easier than you think. It should hold no fears. So let's kick off by finding out if you could give us, Emilie, a general outline of the buying process in France.
Yes, of course. Well, I understand why people are a bit worried about the system, because it's a double process, basically. Like there are two major times during the legal process of purchasing a property. At first, of course, you make an offer, the offer is accepted, and then we will there will be a first agreement. We call it preliminary agreement that needs to be signed. And this agreement is a conditional agreement, so all the precedent conditions of the purchase are mentioned in the agreement. And then there is a lapse of time where the conditions have to be fulfilled, and then there is signature of a second contract, which is the final deed of sale or purchase. So it can be quite long. There are a lot of information that are going to be given to you as a buyer. And I think that's why it's also a bit maybe overwhelming, because there are so many information. The documents to be signed are very long. They are drafted in the French legal language, legal terms that may seem very complicated to even a French person. So yes, this is a process that can take a few months to complete. The good news is that in France, buyers are quite well protected, and basically that's why you receive a lot of information in the first place, because the seller has to make you aware of many things, and give you guarantee over what you purchase. And I think that's why it's important to understand all these informations, because otherwise you are deemed by law to, you're deemed by law to have understood what you're purchasing. And therefore, if there is any issues afterwards, you cannot go back and say, well, I wasn't made aware, because actually it was in the deed. Yeah, so I hopefully that give you a bit of a
Okay,
background process.
brilliant. So we know it's going to take a few months. When should I be contacting you as a lawyer? Should it be when I'm on a viewing trip and I found the property I like, or do you think we should be contacting you beforehand?
So usually, before the offer is accepted, there is nothing like it. It's always good to have a good understanding of the legal process before you make an offer on a property you like. But at the same time, as lawyers, we won't be very useful in terms of reviewing the legal terms before there is actually an offer that has been accepted. So usually, if the offer is accepted, it's good to then um, be in touch, because then we can contact the real estate agent or contact the notaire and get the drafts and all the diagnostic surveys upfront, like right when they are ready, and then we can review them quickly enough to not delay the signature too long. And also, very important that we are involved. If you need, of course, legal advice, it's always better to do it before you sign the preliminary agreement,
Mhm.
because that's when everything is negotiated. So if we find out something that could have an impact on the price of the property or on your consent, it's better to know it before you sign the preliminary agreement, because after the preliminary agreement, there is a 10 days cooling off period. But then after the 10 days cooling off period, the purchase is locked. And it's only if there is any precedent condition that is not fulfilled, and it's not um, the fault of the buyer directly that the condition is not fulfilled, that the purchase can be aborted.
Okay, sure. Now, just looking at where people are buying from, we've got a couple of New Yorkers. We've got Phil G from East Sussex, just down the road from me. We got Rosie, who is tuning in from her van in the Limoges. So we hope you can get into your property before the winter really sets in, Rosie. So people from all over the world. And I guess all that we've got in common amongst those people, I can say, is that we don't use a notary system. So tell me about the notary. And some people think that if there's a notary, why bother with a lawyer? So tell me about the difference between you and the notary.
Yes. So the notary, so in France, any transfer of ownership, in every kind of situation, like every time there is an update of the land registry, basically, the notaire the, is involved. He has to be involved. The notaire is a lawyer, but is appointed by the government to transfer ownership, basically. So the difference between your own lawyer and the notaire is that the notaire works for the purchase, the sales, for the transfer of ownership to happen legally, but it doesn't work in the interest of one or the other party. So whatever the notaire is satisfied with doesn't mean that it will be satisfying for you as a buyer.
Sure. Yeah.
And quite often we realize that people were not aware of specific terms that were in the preliminary agreement or in the deed of sale, because the notary is going to is they have to make sure that you understand. So, for example, they can ask for a translation of the document you sign, but it doesn't like is they're not going to make sure that you have understood that this is what you're purchasing and that the risks you're taking, or that you know there are things that you were not aware that could affect your consent.
Yeah, I mean, my one of my family has bought a lovely flat in Arles. Cost her a fortune. Beautiful flat, which she's going to rent out on Airbnb, and she's just discovered she can't rent it out on air. They won't allow short term lets.
Mm-hmm.
Now, her lawyer would have found that, but the notary wouldn't have been interested in that. That's not part of the state's interest. Okay, we've had a really good question. We've had quite a few questions. One from Bill. It's a big question. What are some pitfalls to watch out for? Where can it all go wrong? I mean, hopefully it won't if we're working with you, but potentially where could it?
Well, of course, depending on where you're purchasing, there are different information that are going to, where and what you're purchasing. There will be some information that are going to be given to you, and they might be different. But I would say, for example, it's quite common that, for example, you visit a house with a swimming pool. I don't know. Um, I would say always check that the swimming pool has been declared, that it has been built legally, because they need to be authorized. I mean, do they need to be authorized or not? And if they needed to be authorized, was it authorized? Um, if yes, there has been some work done on the property in the last 10 years. Have they been done properly? Was there an insurance from the builders? Yes, I mean, a lot. I would say be very mindful with any renovation work that has been done on the property by the sellers. The other, I mean, another thing that is important to realize is that you're going to receive many information, like a lot of information, and what we call the diagnostic surveys, and it depends on where the property is located and what kind of property you're purchasing, when it has been built, and everything. So you receive like a lot of information, but you never receive um, it's not a structural survey. So if you want to make sure the property is sound and safe, if you want to make some work on the property, for example, work is an important um, objective in your purchase, it is good to think about having a surveyor checking the property in the first place, because the diagnostic surveys are never going to tell you if the property stands properly on the ground. And maybe also check if you want to make any work on the property, check if it has to be authorized, and if it's possible to be authorized in where the property is located, or Sometimes the properties are located in very protected areas where nothing can be done. If it is really important to you that this piece of land you are falling in love with is going to become like a nice big property, it is very important to check it as much as possible before you commit.
Okay. Okay, so there's lots of points there, and we've got lots of questions flying in. Let me try to ask the ones that I think are most relevant. Okay, here's an interesting one. This is from Sandy, who is buying a property with her sister and a best friend who's from Europe. What is the best way, would you suggest, to take the title? Should all three names be on it, or is there any difference between that? I guess it also applies to couples who are unmarried. You don't know whose name to put on the title. What would you
Well, I
suggest?
mean, it's very difficult to give a generic answer to this question because it really depends on how everyone, what are the intention of everybody. If you purchase, being a few people purchasing the same place, you have to be careful about like the implication on owning a property together. I mean, first of all, you need to share the cost of the purchase equally, and then how many what are the part of ownership you receive for the price you can make. But as long as you own a property together, that would also give you, common liabilities, and it is not possible to sell a property. I mean, you can't sell a piece. I mean, it's very difficult to sell a piece
Yeah,
of property. So
yeah.
you have to be aware that in order to force a sale of a property, you need a minimum of to own 2/3 of it.
Okay. Okay, so I think Sandy better get in contact with you directly to inquire about that one. And in fact, I would urge all our viewers to note down your name, or you can come via the Overseas Home site where you can fill in a form, and your question will be sent to Emilie. Okay, let's talk about money. We've got a few questions about fees. So there's notary fees and there's lawyer fees. They're not the same thing. So can you tell me the whole package of fees? Just if we're buying a €300,000 property, roughly how much would you expect to have to add on to that for all costs?
Yeah. So the notaire fees, we usually say that. So when we talk about notaire fees, it includes the taxes, like the land registry taxes that are between 5 and 6% basically of the value of the property. And then the notaire fees normally are regulated, so they are the same for any notaire in France. And we usually consider that it's a total amount of 7 to 9%. So that being said, we are talking currently, there is the new, there is a budget
Yeah.
in France that has just been announced, and it is possible that in a few months this notaire fees increase. It will depend on also the department, the district basically in France where you purchase, or the region, because they can be different from one region to another. And so that's for the notaire fees, but probably, that would probably be around 8 to 10% in the next few months. Possibly. At the moment, we consider 7 to 9%. And then, I mean, if you want to appoint your own lawyer, I mean, this is something we will discuss with you. Not necessarily, it will not depend on the value of the property, but more likely on on what you're purchasing, because depending on, for example, if you purchase a flat in a co-ownership, that might be much more work required than buying a detached house. Or I mean,
Sure.
depends what basically the amount of work required from us.
Sure. Okay. So yes, it's 7 to 9% at the moment. It's probably going up. It's quite possibly going up if this budget gets through. Uh, but your independent lawyer fees are on top of that. But they're certainly not. I mean, we're not talking much extra, are we? Really, not compared to the stamp duty. Okay. We've got a question about the surveyor. Who is saying, what point do you get the surveyor? Can you write the preliminary contract and say that depends on the outcome of a survey?
Yes. So, I mean, of course, this is subject to negotiation with the seller, like the seller may or may not accept. But yes, the structural survey can be a precedent condition. Or you can, sometimes they can work fast enough so you don't have to wait, and you can just sign. I mean, you can get the survey right away and then just sign the preliminary contract. But definitely you should have it done before. If you can't have it done before, and if it's important to your consent, that should be a precedent condition.
Okay. Right. We've got so many questions. I'm going to ask for some quick fire questions and answers because I think some of these you can answer quite quickly. Okay. Duncan is saying, is it possible to pass on a French property to a family member in a will?
Yes, of course. It's, I mean, yes,
Okay.
it's
That's fine.
actually, I mean, you want me to develop or?
Yes.
Yes. Yes. So yes, of course, it is possible. Normally, because of I mean, depending where you are resident, but it is likely that French law applies to this property because it's located in France. And otherwise, I mean, you can use I mean, there are many ways to do that, but yes, it is possible. And actually, on a UK, for example, point of view, if you die with a French property, the property is going to be taxed in France, like the inheritance tax will, I mean, it will be subject to inheritance tax in France. And in France, inheritance tax are more favorable to the children. So, because beneficiaries are liable directly, they are directly vested. So they are directly liable for inheritance tax. But the rate for children is the most favorable rate amongst other members of the family, except, I mean, spouses are exempted at the moment, and then the children will inherit.
And there's a system of what's called enforced heirship, is there not? So you have to your children have to inherit.
Yes, I mean, if you, it is possible to avoid it in certain circumstances, but yes, the principle should be that the children should inherit of the property, at least a share of it.
So if your mother runs off to France and marries a Frenchman, the good news is when she dies, you will still get your portion of the house. So that's
yes. I mean, you not necessarily receive it automatically, but you could claim it. I mean, again, this is very difficult to answer in a general way because there are ways around it. And for example, it is possible to elect English law to apply to the distribution of the French property. But then if the deceased is French resident, or if any of the children are resident in a European member state, for example, or a national of a European member state, they have a claim for their protected heirship. So this is not automatic. That could work. That doesn't work all the time.
Okay, Angela has asked, is it possible to buy a property, renovate it, sell it, and then buy another one on a long stay visitors visa? Now, I know you don't do visas, but anyone can buy a property, renovate it, and sell it, can't they?
Yes, I mean, the only problem with that would be that capital gain tax would be like as long as the property is located in France, you're subject to capital gain tax in France. So imagine if the property is renovated and sold, then it would be subject to probably a big capital gain tax in France. Because the way capital gain tax is works basically is that it depends on the length of ownership. So the longer you own the property, and the liability then decrease. And after 30 years of ownership, there is no more capital gain tax. But yeah,
Okay.
buying to renovate and sell, it might, it needs to be calculated properly.
Okay. Jane is asking, what happens if my UK buyer pulls out of my sale when I'm buying a house in France? So you're in a chain type situation. Mm-hmm. How does France deal with that?
So no, in France we don't have the chain. It's not like a French concept at all. So basically, you purchase a house only, or a property only, when you are able to move to the property, or So it is usually not possible to put it as a condition in the preliminary agreement that it is subject to the sale of a UK property. It is accepted by some notaires when you are in a sufficiently advanced stage in the UK. Like, for example, if you have exchange contracts already, then you are able to have this as a condition because it's very likely that it's going to happen. But because in most cases, because UK, how the UK system works seems a bit too, how do you say, not committed, not, like you don't commit enough.
Later.
Because the buyer can just withdraw his offer at any time. So so that usually doesn't work. So basically, yeah.
So it's better really than the UK system, I think. Okay. Let's going through the questions. Okay, so suppose I'm buying, this is from Phil G, who's saying, what about things like planning permission and rights of way and all that kind of thing? So when we find the property that we like, we might think, well, I want to put in a pool, the shutters need seeing to, needs a new roof. I want to convert that barn into a whatever yoga room. Oh, but there's a footpath walking past it. Are you able to advise on all those matters, whether we might get planning permission, whether we might be able to make any changes before we commit to buying it?
Yes, I mean, first of all, it is possible to, looking into it in terms of checking the regulation in the area and things like that. But also, it is possible to put it as a condition in the preliminary contract, basically, that you would start basically the process of getting an authorization, and then that could be a condition to the purchase. So starting the process and then the authorization would be the condition. Of course, again, this is subject to negotiation with the seller. So it is important as well when you make an offer to make sure that this is this is part of the negotiation already.
Okay, right. Well, we've got lots of questions we haven't had time to ask, so I apologise to people who haven't had their question answered. But please do contact us or contact Emilie, and we will get your question answered. We're here to help you, to help ensure that you can get that lovely property in France. Hopefully, 2025 is going to be your year to buy in France. Pardon me. Thank you to Emilie. Thank you for all your fantastic questions. If there should be a link popping up for you to leave a review on Trustpilot if you found this webinar helpful. It all helps to get the word out. And there you go. And so thank you to Emilie once again. Thank you for joining us, and hope and good luck in your property search in France. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Goodbye.